Hey guys, hope you're well. Want to give you another court update, not about Aaron, but this time about DOA. So some interesting news there. He was quite boastful, quite prideful that he actually got a continuance. And I will say, I know a lot of you, either on Team Aaron or Team DOA, do not like when I say somebody had a success in court, but you got to look at the reality. DOA had a success in court. Was it a huge success? Is it something that's going to change the momentum of his case? I doubt it, but he was competent enough, at least, to stay out of jail and actually get a continuance, and for a very specific reason. DOA said that he wanted to get his continuance so he could utilize a private investigator. Now, the thing is, DOA is very confident that the information this private investigator unveils will allow him to be let off. And he also announced, there's another option there, potentially. He also announced that there is a plea deal in consideration, that the discussion was at the end of the hearing that they would potentially look into a plea deal. So I will say, I'll give him credit in the regard that at least a plea deal is still on the table. I thought he was so boisterous, performed so poorly, was arrogant not to utilize an attorney. I thought that there'd be absolutely zero sympathy and that the judge wouldn't even entertain a plea case, a plea deal. Now, just because a plea deal will be entertained doesn't mean it will be offered or that DOA will take it, or very much doesn't mean that it'll be offered necessarily. But at least it is on the table, and he was deft enough and knew the legalese enough to at least try to go down that specific route. So that is potentially an option. He said it might be a misdemeanor, but was what they might plea it down to simply a misdemeanor, and he won't look at any felonies. I think that might be wishful thinking too. If he gets a plea deal, it might be, only 70% of what they asked for, but DOA is hoping for a lot less. That's something also to note. DOA feels like he could get let off, so the plea deal might be irrelevant because of the second claim he made. The claim he made is he wanted to utilize a private investigator to get to the bottom of all the swattings, and he noticed that at a myriad of the swattings, and a number of the swattings, somebody has called saying they're a Scientology security guard. Now, somebody could be lying about that, but that's why DOA would utilize the investigator to look at the veracity of the claim that the caller, that the swatter who swatted him, was actually somebody in conjunction with Scientology. Here's the big thing. Yes, he's allowed to get time to get the private investigator. Yes, he's allowed to look into this issue, but the judge is not going to find this relevant. He's going to look at the actions that DOA has employed, and he's going to say, well, this has nothing to do with you potentially assaulting somebody or you attacking somebody. And even if Scientology was involved in this sort of conspiracy, and you're correct about this, this has nothing to do with your actual case. And remember, judges hate pieces of evidence that force them to stay on this case longer and that don't actually have much to do with the case itself. They get very annoyed. So if DOA goes down that route, I don't see how it's going to help him, but at least he did get he might potentially get a plea deal. Now, it should be noted, in about 90% of cases like DOA's, people get offered plea deals. I thought he might be too far gone because he was such a prick in the early hearings and so unlikable and standoffish and arrogant. I thought that was out the window, but that's not out the window. So that's good news for him. I also wanted to know a little bit about Aaron. I got something wrong. On December 5th, actually, is his next hearing, not December 18th. There is a hearing on December 18th, but Jenna got that wrong, and I repeated Jenna's information. As I said, that's the source I was using. And Jenna got that wrong, and so I got that wrong in conjunction, but December 5th is a hearing. So not much beyond that, not a ton to talk about other than he's thinking that this changes the whole momentum of his case. He also says that he might reutilize his attorney again. That would be Cape Lovitz, and was talking that he's been in conversation with them, and amazingly, he didn't piss Cape Lovitz off. I thought he pissed him off into the abyss, but apparently there's some conversations being had back and forth. So, things look better than they did look at the last hearing for DOA. It would be smart if he actually gets a lawyer. We'll see what happens with that. But that's essentially what's happened. He's going to try to get this investigator to prove that Scientology is doing the swattings, which I think will have nothing to do with the success of his case. But, it would be interesting just to get on the record, just to say, hey, this has been proven. There actually is a conspiracy to try to attack a lot of these protesters, and they're part of this conspiracy, but I don't think it actually has any relevance in terms of his case. So I still don't think it looks very good at all. And initially, he said he might take a deal, but more likely he wanted to fight it. And that was the reason that DOA gave for raising all this money, that he wanted to see this through. So it is a little interesting. If he doesn't actually see it through, you wonder, where does all the money go to? It hasn't been towards his attorney, but if he utilizes his attorney in the future, then you'll see where his money goes to. So, you got to give a very small, insignificant, minor victory, but still a victory for DOA. So I know you guys don't like when I say one of the guys had a success, but objectively speaking, he had a success. And I'm going to say that. Listen, with these two cases, neither of these charges could have happened to nicer guys, right? Sarcastic, obviously. But you're still going to recognize when they have success. So that's the deal, and I'll give a report on December 5th. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.